economics, the mechanics of the economics to actually kind of work. So I think we're 700 dwellings out there now, so about 700 perhaps.
Yeah.
And more to come.
You may call Richland's Azure land. You're welcome to use that terminology. It's our space.
Yeah, and it's interesting, obviously, with the panorama, obviously there's a slight change of tack to actually bring in some more small lot housing and not just townhouses out there too. So that's a sign of that things are really mixing it up, isn't it?
Totally.
Apartments, townhouses, housing. And that's the other thing too, is this obviously is a very upmarket apartment project here. But obviously apartments is a big part of the Azure future too. And obviously we've got a big history with apartments, but we all know that it's buildings that make money, not just individual units, because you buy it cheap or anything else. You want to have good buildings, and that's something that the same design ethics that we've seen in all the other things, and the obviously the experience at Intel, we'll be carrying that into that.
100%. It's interesting, just to go back to the Richlands journey. For us, we wanted to try and kind of change the face of that suburb. What we identified really early was the core macro fundamentals of Richlands was deserved of better quality product. What was happening when you look at the economic environment in that area, close proximity to massive workforce, really good schools. It had come off the back of this regentrification that Len Lease had done at Forest Lake. So we had a really good established housing community with housing growth and a bit of housing typology and diversity as well. So for us, the Richlands residential component, traditionally Richlands is recognised as being industrial land or commercial based land. The residential component is really actually quite small, very tightly held, was predominantly kind of market gardens and so forth. So for us to be able to identify essentially what we knew at a macro level was right, and then to bring in a new typology or a better quality typology, and then to get product diversification, we put the first 4-bedroom terrace into the Richlands community. And at the time, people were saying, oh, you're mad. And now if we look at the weighting of our portfolio out there, I'd say probably 70% is the 4-bedroom product. Not because people are using all the 4 beds, but if you think about the time we live in now, that 4th bedroom provides some diversification. So it's offices, people working from home, people having that level of flexibility in terms of space and the way the design actually works. And then again, creating those macro communities, which the living team have done so well, just by pegging us against a standard that is different than what anyone else is doing. People, Claire will tell stories. We've got waiting lists of people that want to move into our communities because they're buying into the lifestyle, they're buying into the quality that we're producing. And as opposed to that, development philosophy where you create something and then you're off to the next one, we're kind of there forever.
Yeah, and I think that curbside appeal, it's not surprised that you've got people wanting to live there or to rent there or to buy there. It's obvious. You pull up in front and you go, oh, that's nice. What's that? And then you go inside, and I think for me, I was pointing this out, the team were probably sick of me talking about it. I said, look at the way between the garages that he's designed the trees and things like that. This is not easy to design. You've got to actually really care about it. And some people were going through trying to calculate how much that tree's $1,000, that tree's $600.
Just ask Pat. Right? I think Pat's got a bit of rinse in his hair because for a young guy, he goes grey really quickly because he's worried, how are we going to afford this? No, we're right, Pat. We'll make it happen.
Now, is it true that you actually grow your own sort of palm tree
100%.
farm? So talk to people about that, because the palm trees is a bit of a symbolic botanical feature that you like.
Well, I think the canary palms, which are a big key market tree that we use in not every project, but a lot of our projects, we bring most of those up from South Australia. So there's a tree farm in South Australia that grows a lot of those. They're a really great kind of identifiable landscape marker feature that's synonymous with Southeast Queensland. When you come from Sydney and Melbourne, those kind of things don't grow well down there, whereas in Queensland we've got a different climate. So for us to celebrate the key kind of lifestyle and the subtropical climate that we enjoy, the palm's a real signature. But we've also got a nursery on the banks of the Logan River, which is growing 2 or 3 projects ahead of all of our key landscaping and tree palettes. We only have about a 6-plant policy, so we have a very, I'll talk a little bit later about where we are unashamedly control freaks in everything that we do. I'm a good controlling obsessional.
You hide it well.
Just right. But we use our powers for good, not evil. So the reality is, we have a very controlled landscaping palette that we apply in different locations and in different ways across all of our projects. And that's a really important part of creating an identifiable brand. So what we've established in South East Queensland over the last 10 years essentially is people can identify an Azure product. You know, we have more than just our name sitting out the front on the front fence. It's all of the sum total of the landscape palette, the way we're maintaining, the way the landscape looks from day one, because we don't, you know, we invest significantly into landscape, but that finds its way into the coordination. You know, like, not to take the words out of Pat's mouth, but you know, our team are very, very passionate about all of those 1%ers. So when they're in design meetings, when they're in coordination meetings, you know, they're bashing up the civil engineers to make sure that the services are not in a location that means that the trees are not going to grow. So when you fast forward for 7 or 8 or 10 years, our best way of selling an Azure product now is to just send people past the things we've previously done, because our brand and reputation now gains momentum based off the fact that we delivered on the promise back here, and we will always deliver on the promise. And you know, jokes aside around cost, sometimes that comes at the cost of bottom line, but for us, we're a legacy-based developer. So we're a private, we don't have to answer to shareholders, we don't have to answer, we're not a publicly listed company. So our legacy and our ideology is driven by the things that we're doing over the next 10, 15, 20 and 30 years, not just about how do we make the most out of this project. So that's particularly important, I think, in times like these, because what we're seeing in South East Queensland is great growth, which is great, everyone's excited, everyone's up and about, but it's the decisions now that you have to make with respect to construction costs, which I'm sure you guys are all aware of. We're getting completely smashed. I think it's a nationwide thing, but in South East Queensland, we're getting particularly smashed with construction prices. But we're very, very lucky because it doesn't, you know, all of that adversity and that noise doesn't change the key core principles about how we go about things. So for us, we're still coordinating, we're still making sure that, you know, the trees are appropriate, the quality of build is appropriate, regardless of what we're building and regardless of what we're building at what price point. So.
And I think the final comment I'd make, because I can smell breakfast behind us, so we don't want to tease everyone, is just that construction costs, my sense is that it's actually reset the market.
Totally.
So we've actually seen a reset. So prior to the last couple of years, there was obviously new property and things, but what we've happened is there's such heat in the existing property market, and now obviously the cost in relation to doing something new, that now has increased. So for anyone who owns existing properties, that's fantastic news, because it's harder to replace something. It's a lot more money to replace something. And so with all the growth and everything that's going on, like I said, it's a resetting of that market. So it's going to be good. All right,
Please,
come and grab some